punch started everything. Remember, no one is above the law.
The fist cracked against his
Chief
jaw.
Morrison, what happened
Blood
out there?
exploded across the white shirt, bright red on pure white. Detective Rick Dalton laughed, shaking out his knuckles. That's what happens when you disrespect the badge, pretty boy. The man didn't fall. He straightened slowly, touched his split lip, and smiled. Not a grimace. A smile. Cold. Knowing. Terrifying. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, the man said quietly. Dalton had no idea he'd just punched the one person in America who could destroy him with a phone call. That call was coming in 3 minutes. But first, hit subscribe and smash that notification bell. Drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. We want to see how far this story travels, because what happens next will blow your mind. Trust me, you need to see how this ends. 8:47 a.m., District 9 Precinct. Rick Dalton stood on the precinct steps, coffee in hand, watching the street. 17 years on the force. 17 years of making his city respect the badge whether they wanted to or not. You see that guy? Dalton jerked his chin toward the sidewalk across the street. Tony Martinez followed his gaze. A man in a navy suit stood there, expensive looking. Too expensive for this neighborhood, just standing, watching the precinct like he was taking notes. Probably a lawyer, Martinez said. For 5 minutes just staring. Dalton set his coffee down. Something's off. Officer Chris Walker pushed through the doors behind them, fresh-faced and naive, 6 months out of the academy. Captain Hayes wants everyone sharp, Walker said. New chief arrives at 9, big reform guy from out of state. Dalton snorted. Another pencil pusher coming to tell us how to do our jobs. I've buried 3 chiefs already. This one will be gone in 2 years. I heard he's different. They're all different until they're not. Now shut up. We've got a situation. The man across the street hadn't moved. Still watching. Still taking mental notes like he owned the place. Let's go have a conversation, Dalton said. Martinez grinned. I'll film it. Group chat's gonna love this. Walker hesitated. He's not doing anything illegal. Not yet, but I know trouble when I see it. They crossed the street. 3 cops' boots heavy on pavement. The man watched them come. Didn't flinch, didn't reach for his phone. Just watched with dark, intelligent eyes that showed zero fear. That pissed Dalton off more than anything. They stopped 3 feet away. The man was tall, early 40s, with an air of calm that felt like mockery. Like he'd never been told no in his entire privileged life. You got a problem, Dalton growled. No problem, officer. Then why are you eye-fucking my precinct? You waiting for someone? Just observing. Observing what? The building. It's well designed. Martinez laughed. Rick, he likes the architecture. Dalton stepped closer, using his size as a weapon. That's a weird hobby, standing outside a police station at 8 in the morning, staring like a creep. The man didn't step back. Is there a law against standing on a public sidewalk? Don't get smart with me. I'm asking a legitimate question. The calm, the perfect diction, the expensive suit, everything about this man screamed money and education and all the things Dalton had learned to hate growing up in a neighborhood where nobody gave you anything. Let me educate you about this neighborhood, Dalton said, voice dropping to that dangerous register. People in $1,000 suits don't just stand around here unless they're up to something, so I'm asking one more time, what's your business? As I said, observing. Observing what? Human behavior. Martinez cackled. Human behavior? That's a new one. Walker shifted uncomfortably. Something felt wrong. The man wasn't acting scared or guilty. He was acting like he was the one in control. You think you're funny? Dalton asked. Not particularly. You think you can stand here in your pretty clothes looking down on us working cop. I'm not looking down on anyone. The hell you're not. I can see it in your eyes. You think you're better. You think that suit makes you special. Something flickered in the man's expression. Not fear, calculation. Like he was doing math in his head and Dalton was part of the equation. Officer, the man said carefully, I haven't broken any laws. I'm on a public sidewalk. If you have a specific reason to detain me, I'm listening. If not, I'll be moving along shortly. The logic, the composure, the refusal to be intimidated. It ignited something ugly in Dalton's chest. Years of resentment of feeling disrespected by people like this who'd never had to fight for anything. You know what I think? Dalton stepped into the man's personal space. I think you're here to cause trouble. One of those activist types. Looking to bait cops into something you can post online. I'm not filming anything. Then what's in your pockets? Wallet and keys. I'll decide that. Turn around. Face the wall. The man's eyes narrowed slightly. On what grounds? Reasonable suspicion. You're acting suspicious loitering near a police facility. My answers haven't been evasive. I've been completely honest. I said turn around. Dalton's voice echoed off the buildings. Across the street, a woman walking her dog stopped, pulled out her phone. The man glanced at her, then back at Dalton. This is harassment. You need probable cause, and you don't have it. Don't tell me what I need. Dalton shoved him, both hands against the chest, hard. It should have knocked him back, should have made him stumble, but the man barely moved. His feet stayed planted like tree roots. That shocked Dalton. Everyone stumbled. Always. Rick, come on, Walker said weakly. This isn't... Shut it, Walker. Dalton shoved again, harder. You think you're tough. You think that fancy shirt protects you. Martinez had his phone up recording. This was gold. Rick putting some arrogant suit in his place. The man's jaw tightened. His whole body radiated controlled power like a compressed spring. Last chance, Dalton said. Hands on the wall or you're going in. For what crime? I'll think of something. The man's eyes went cold. You're making a serious mistake. The only mistake is you disrespecting me on my street. This isn't your street. That was it. The final insult. The absolute refusal to submit. Dalton had given this man every chance to back down to show proper deference. The fact that he wouldn't meant he needed to be taught the lesson. Everyone eventually learned the badge was the law, and the law answered to no one. You want to talk about mistakes? Dalton's voice shook with rage. You're about to learn. He pulled back his arm. Walker saw it coming, opened his mouth, closed it. The code of silence was absolute. You never stopped your partner. Dalton threw everything into the punch. A street fighter's hook aimed at the jaw. It connected with a sickening crack. Blood sprayed. The man's head snapped sideways. The woman with the dog gasped, phone held high. For a moment, the man staggered. Dalton felt pure satisfaction surge through him. Finally, this arrogant bastard was showing weakness. But the man didn't fall. He straightened. Slowly. Like he had all the time in the world. Brought his hand to his mouth, looked at the blood on his fingers. A single drop fell onto his white shirt, a perfect red circle on pristine fabric. Then he turned his head back to face Dalton, and smiled. Not pain, not fear. Something else entirely. Something that made Dalton's satisfaction turn to ice in his veins. That's assault, the man said quietly. Witnessed by multiple civilians. Captured on video. No provocation, no legal justification, you just ended your career. Dalton's confidence wavered. What? You heard me. Martinez lowered his phone slightly. Walker had gone white as paper. You assaulted a police officer, Dalton blustered. That's a felony. You're under arrest. I never touched you. Everyone saw that. The woman across the street is recording. Your partner's recording. The precinct security cameras are recording. You assaulted an unarmed man on a public street while he committed no crime. The precision of the words, the legal terminology, the complete absence of panic, cold water down Dalton's spine. You resisted, Dalton said desperately. You took a swing at me. Tony, you saw it, right? Martinez hesitated, then nodded. Yeah, he swung first. It was a lie. The kind of lie they'd told 100 times. The kind that always worked. The man shook his head slowly. Officer Martinez, badge number 8R82. You just committed perjury and filed a false police report. Class E felony. I hope you understand the implications. Martinez's face drained. How do you know my badge number? I know many things. Dalton grabbed the man's arm, spinning him toward the wall. Shut your mouth. Hands on the wall now. He slammed him against the brick. Hard enough to hurt. Martinez moved in, and together they conducted a search they had no legal right to perform. Dalton's hands moved over the man's legs, waist, chest. From the trouser pocket, he pulled out a leather wallet, flipped it open, expecting something incriminating. Instead, a driver's license from out of state, a platinum credit card, over $2,000 in crisp bills. Look at this cash. Dalton held it up. Where'd you get this drugs prostitution? I have a job. What kind of job pays for standing around in expensive suits? Martinez was searching the jacket. His fingers found something hard in the inner pocket. Metallic. He pulled it out a leather badge case. Rick Call, Martinez said, voice strange. Check this out. Dalton snatched it, flipped it open. A police badge. Not NYPD, different design. and an ID card with photo. Relief flooded through him. Well, well, playing cop, this is perfect. Add impersonation to the charges. He held it up like a trophy. Did you buy this on eBay? Think it would impress us? That's my badge, the man said quietly. Sure it is, and I'm Superman. Dalton squinted at the ID. This says you're Captain. Captain James. He trailed off. Read it again. His brain refused to process. This is fake, Dalton said, but his voice sounded weak even to himself. It's not fake. That's my old badge. From my previous department. I kept it when I transferred. Transferred where? Here. Bullshit, you're no cop. I was a captain for 20 years. As of 9 a.m. this morning, I'm something else. What? The man turned his head slightly, looking past Dalton toward the precinct entrance. You have about 60 seconds to find out. Dalton followed his gaze. Through the glass doors, he saw movement. Captain Hayes was walking toward the exit. Formal posture, professional smile on her face. His stomach dropped. Tony, he whispered. What time is it? Martinez checked his watch. 8:59. The new chief. When does he arrive? 9 o'clock. Why? Martinez stopped. His eyes went wide. Oh shit, Rick. No, Dalton breathed. No way. There's no way. Every way, the man said. The precinct doors opened. Captain Hayes stepped out. Smile bright and welcoming. Good morning, gentlemen. Beautiful day to... She saw the scene. The man against the wall. The blood on his shirt. The badge in Dalton's hand. Her smile died like someone had shot it. What? Her voice was barely a whisper. What is going on here? Dalton's mouth was desert dry. His heart hammered against his ribs like it was trying to escape. Captain, we have a situation. This individual was loitering, became aggressive when questioned. We discovered fraudulent police identification. We're placing him under arrest for impersonation and assault. Every word was a lie, and Hayes' 23 years on the force knew lies when she heard them. She walked down the steps slowly, like she was approaching a bomb. When she got close, she looked at the man's face. Really looked. Recognition hit her like a freight train. Chief Morrison. The words came out strangled. The man smiled that terrible knowing smile. Good morning, Captain Hayes. Pleasure to finally meet you. I apologize for the unconventional introduction. I wanted to observe the precinct culture firsthand before making my presence known. He glanced at Dalton. Mission accomplished. The silence was absolute. Complete. The kind of silence that exists in the moment before a building collapses. Dalton felt reality tilt beneath him. The words didn't make sense. Couldn't make sense. Chief? He croaked. James Morrison, chief of police for the entire city effective 9 a.m. turned his full attention to Dalton. Blood still dripped from his lip onto his ruined shirt. Yes, Detective Dalton. Chief, the position I assumed officially... He checked his watch from approximately 90 seconds ago. Martinez's phone clattered to the concrete. Walker made a sound like a dying animal, and Dalton felt warmth spreading down his leg. His bladder had simply given up. He was pissing himself. On the precinct steps, in front of his new boss. The boss he'd just punched in the face. I didn't... Dalton's voice cracked. I thought You thought I was someone you could brutalize without consequences, Morrison said quietly. You thought your badge made you untouchable. You thought wrong. Hayes had gone from pale to red fury barely contained. Detective Dalton, step away from the chief, now! Dalton stumbled backward. His legs felt like water. Morrison straightened his jacket with precise movements despite the blood and bruising. He looked at Hayes with absolute authority. Captain, call internal affairs. Tell them I'm invoking Code 1. I want a team here in 30 minutes. Yes, Chief, right away. And Captain, Morrison's voice dropped to command tone. Place these 3 officers under arrest. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Hayes' voice cracked. Sir, you heard me correctly. They're under arrest. Felony assault conspiracy, filing false reports, unlawful search and seizure in violation of civil rights under color of law. By the book, Captain. Every procedure followed, every detail documented. Dalton's legs gave out. He sat hard on the concrete steps, the wet stain on his pants visible to everyone. I have kids, he whispered. I have a mortgage, a pension. Morrison looked down at him without a shred of pity. You should have considered that before you decided the badge gave you permission to assault citizens. It was a mistake. No, it was a choice. You made it consciously. You made it with 17 years of experience. You made it because you thought you'd get away with it like you always have. Morrison's voice cut like a scalpel. "You were wrong." Martinez was crying, actually sobbing. "It was his idea. I just went along. I didn't know who you were. You knew enough. You filmed it. You laughed. You lied to support his false report. Your ignorance of my identity doesn't excuse your actions." Morrison turned to Walker, who looked like he might vomit. "Officer Walker, you didn't participate in the assault. You didn't file a false report, but you stood by and watched. That makes you complicit. That makes you guilty." "I'm sorry," Walker sobbed. "I knew it was wrong. I should have stopped it." "Yes, you should have. That's why you became a police officer, wasn't it? To stop wrong things from happening. But when it mattered, when everything you learned at the academy was put to the test, you failed." Hayes was on her radio voice, shaking as she called for backup for internal affairs for the district commander. Other officers were emerging from the building, their faces shifting from confusion to horror as they processed the scene. Morrison picked up his old badge from where Dalton had dropped it, wiped the blood off with his handkerchief, tucked it back into his jacket pocket. "Captain Hayes," he said, voice carrying authority that made everyone stand straighter. "Disarm these officers immediately, service weapons backup pieces, knives, everything. Secure it all as evidence." "Yes, Chief." "I want the security footage from the past hour preserved. All cameras, internal and external. I want photographs of my entries. I want witness statements from every civilian who saw this. I want it done by the book because this is going to be my first official act as chief, and I want it to be perfect." "Understood completely, sir." Morrison touched his jaw, gently wincing. "I'll need medical attention, but that can wait. First, I want to watch these officers processed exactly like any other criminals, because that's what they are now." Backup arrived 4 patrol cars, lights flashing. Officers Dalton had worked with for years climbed out their faces shocked as Hayes briefed them rapidly. Within minutes, Dalton, Martinez, and Walker were in handcuffs. The crowd across the street had grown to 30 people. Every phone was recording. As Dalton was walked toward a patrol car, hands cuffed behind his back, wet stain visible on his pants, he looked back one last time. Morrison stood on the precinct steps, silhouetted against the morning sun. Blood on his shirt. Bruise darkening on his jaw. Looking like exactly what he was. A man who had just declared war on corruption and won the opening battle decisively. The car door slammed. Detective Rick Dalton's life was over, and Chief James Morrison's had just begun. What Dalton didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Morrison had been documenting their corruption for 3 weeks. Every complaint file, every excessive force report, every suspicious shooting. This wasn't just an arrest. It was an opening move in a campaign that would tear the department apart and rebuild it from scratch. But that story was just beginning. The patrol car carrying Dalton pulled away, and Morrison watched until it disappeared around the corner. Then his legs nearly gave out. He caught himself against the precinct wall, hand pressed to his ribs where Dalton's shove had hit harder than he'd let anyone see. "Chief?" Hayes was beside him instantly. "Sir, you need medical—" "Not yet." Morrison straightened, forcing his body back under control. "How many officers are on duty right now?" "42, including command staff." "Good. Get them all in the assembly room, every single one, right now." Hayes blinked. "Sir, we have patrol coverage." "Pull them in. I want every officer in this precinct standing in that room in 15 minutes. No exceptions." "But the district—" "Will survive 15 minutes without patrol coverage. This can't wait, Captain. Move." Hayes hesitated 1 second, then grabbed her radio. "All units return to precinct immediately. Code 7. All personnel report to assembly room in 15 minutes. This is not a drill." Morrison pushed off the wall and walked through the precinct doors. His jaw throbbed with each step. Blood had dried sticky on his collar. He could feel every eye in the building tracking him as he moved through the lobby. Sergeant Maria Rodriguez stood behind the desk, her face ashen. She'd watched the whole thing on the security monitors. "Sergeant," Morrison said without stopping, "I need the personnel files for every officer in this precinct delivered to my office within the hour. All of them. And the complaint records for the past 5 years." "Yes, Chief." Her voice was barely audible. Morrison climbed the stairs to the 2nd floor. His office, Dalton's former captain's office, was at the end of the hall. He pushed open the door and stopped. The room was immaculate, too immaculate, like someone had scrubbed it clean knowing he was coming. He walked to the desk, opened the top drawer. Empty. 2nd drawer. Empty. 3rd drawer, a half-empty bottle of bourbon and a pack of cigarettes. He opened the filing cabinet. Empty except for blank forms. They'd sanitized everything. Removed any evidence of how business actually got done in this precinct. Morrison smiled grimly. They thought they were clever. They had no idea he'd been studying their patterns for 3 weeks, that he'd built entire shadow files from civilian complaints, lawsuit depositions, and internal affairs interviews that never went anywhere. He pulled out his phone and dialed. 2 rings. "Morrison, talk to me." The voice belonged to Marcus Chen, his former partner from Metro PD. Chen had followed Morrison's career with the intensity of a proud parent. "I need everything," Morrison said. "Every piece of data we collected on District 9. Send it to my city email in the next 10 minutes. "Jesus, James, what happened? You sound like you got hit by a truck." "Close. I got hit by a detective." Silence. "Then, they put hands on you." "1 punch. Caught me clean on the jaw. I let him." "You let him? Have you lost your mind?" "I needed to see it, Marcus. Needed to feel what these officers have been doing to people for years. Now I have standing. Now I have credibility. And now I have 3 officers in federal custody and probable cause to investigate every cop in this building." Chen whistled low. "You magnificent bastard. How bad is the damage?" "Split lip, bruised jaw, ruined shirt. Nothing that won't heal. But Dalton's career, Martinez's career, they're done. Finished. And before the day's over, I'm going to find out who else needs to go with them." "Files are uploading now. Morrison, be careful. Cornered rats bite hard." "Let them try." Morrison ended the call and walked to the window. From here he could see the street where Dalton had hit him. Crime scene tape was going up now. Evidence markers on the sidewalk. A forensics team photographing bloodstains. His blood. The door opened behind him. Hayes entered, followed by a thin man in an expensive suit carrying a medical bag. "Chief, this is Dr. Patel. He's our department physician." Morrison turned. "Doctor, I appreciate you coming, but I don't have time for a full examination." "Shut." Patel's expression was professional but firm. "Chief Morrison, if you refuse medical treatment after an assault, any prosecutor will use it to argue your injuries weren't serious. That weakens the case against Officer Dalton, so sit down and let me do my job." "Smart man?" Morrison sat. Patel worked quickly, examining the jaw, checking for fractures, cleaning the split lip. "You're going to have spectacular bruising. The jaw isn't broken, but it's going to hurt for a week. I'm documenting everything with photographs. You'll have a full medical report within 2 hours." "Thank you, Doctor." Patel packed his bag. "For what it's worth, Chief, that took courage. What you did out there." He left before Morrison could respond. Hayes remained standing at attention. "The officers are assembling now. We'll have full attendance in 8 minutes." "Good. What's the mood?" "Terrified. Confused. Some are angry, but they're keeping it quiet. Everyone saw what happened to Dalton." "How long have you been at District 9 Captain? For 4 years. In those 4 years, how many complaints have been filed against officers in this precinct?" Hayes shifted her weight. "I'd have to check the exact ballpark. 200, maybe 250. "And how many resulted in disciplinary action?" Silence. "Captain Hayes, I asked you a question." 7, sir. 7 resulted in formal discipline." 7 out of 250. That's a success rate of less than 3%. "Do you find that acceptable?" "No, sir." "Do you think it's a coincidence?" Hayes met his eyes. "No, sir. I think it's systemic." Morrison stood. "Then you and I are going to get along fine, because in the next 6 months we're going to burn that system to the ground and build something new. Are you ready for that fight?" "I've been ready for years, Chief. I just didn't have backup." "You have it now. Let's go meet your officers." They walked down the stairs together. Morrison could hear voices from the assembly room, nervous, hushed conversations that died the moment he appeared in the doorway. 42 faces turned toward him. Young officers, veterans, men and women from every background. Some looked scared. Some looked defiant. A few looked hopeful. Morrison walked to the front of the room, each step deliberate. The bruise on his jaw was already turning purple. The cut on his lip had been glued shut, but still looked angry and fresh. He wanted them to see it, wanted them to understand that he wasn't some bureaucrat who'd never been in the streets. He'd bled on their precinct steps. He'd earned the right to stand here. "My name is James Morrison." He began, his voice carrying to the back of the room without being loud. "As of 9 o'clock this morning, I'm your chief of police. Some of you witnessed what happened on the steps. For those who didn't, here's the summary. 3 of your fellow officers assaulted me, conducted an illegal search, filed false reports, and are now in federal custody facing felony charges. They didn't know who I was, but that's not why they're facing those charges. They're facing them because what they did was wrong. It would have been wrong if I was a janitor, a lawyer, or a homeless man. The badge doesn't give you permission to brutalize people. It gives you responsibility to protect them. A hand went up in the back. Young officer, maybe 25. Sir, with respect, Dalton's been on the force for 17 years. He knows how to handle suspects. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Morrison fixed him with a stare. Officer? Patterson, sir? Officer Patterson, there was no misunderstanding. There was a clear-cut assault witnessed by multiple civilians and captured on video. If you're suggesting that Dalton's 17 years of experience somehow justifies punching an unarmed man in the face, then you and I need to have a very different conversation after this meeting, in my office. Patterson's face went red. He sat down. Let me be crystal clear, Morrison continued. I didn't come here to make friends. I didn't come here to maintain the status quo. I came here because this precinct has the highest complaint rate in the city, the worst community relations, and a culture that protects bad cops at the expense of good ones. That ends today. An older officer in the front row, Sergeant Bill Kovac, according to his nameplate, raised his hand. Chief, most of those complaints are bullshit. Criminals lying to get out of charges. You've been a cop, you know how it works. I do know how it works, Sergeant. I also know that when only 3% of complaints result in discipline, it's not because 97% are false. It's because the system is designed to protect officers regardless of guilt, and that system makes us all less safe. When the community doesn't trust us, they don't call us. They don't cooperate. They don't testify. Crimes go unsolved. Bad guys walk free. And good cops pay the price for the bad ones. Morrison paused, letting that sink in. Here's what's going to happen. Starting today, Internal Affairs will be conducting a full audit of this precinct. Every use of force report from the past 5 years will be reviewed. Every complaint will be reopened and re-examined. Every officer's record will be scrutinized. If you've done nothing wrong, you have nothing to fear. If you have, start talking to lawyers. The room erupted, officers shouting questions, objections, protests. Morrison let it go for 10 seconds, then raised his hand. The room fell silent. I know this is scary. I know it feels like an attack, but it's not. It's an intervention. This precinct is sick and I'm the medicine. The treatment is going to be painful, but the alternative is watching this department destroy itself from within. He scanned the room, making eye contact with as many officers as possible. Some of you are good cops. You come to work, you do the job right, treat people with dignity. You're watching bad officers make your life harder every single day. To you, I say, help me. Come to my office, tell me what you've seen. You'll have full whistleblower protection, no retaliation, no consequences, just honesty. Another hand, female officer mid-30s. And if we don't, if we keep quiet, then you're complicit. Silence is consent. If you watch misconduct happen and say nothing, you're as guilty as the officer who committed it. There's no neutral position anymore. You're either part of the solution or part of the problem. The room had gone completely still. Morrison could feel the weight of 42 sets of eyes on him. 42 minds processing what this meant for their careers, their futures. Final thing, Morrison said. Some of you are angry right now. Angry at me for disrupting your comfortable world. Angry at the department for bringing in an outsider. Maybe even angry enough to do something stupid. Before you do remember what happened to Dalton this morning. He thought he was untouchable. He thought his 17 years gave him immunity. He was wrong. Don't make his mistake. Morrison turned to Hayes. Captain, that's all. Return the officers to their duties. He walked out of the assembly room without waiting for a response. Behind him, the room exploded into conversation. Morrison climbed the stairs back to his office, closed the door, and finally let himself feel the pain. His jaw was screaming now. His head pounded. His ribs ached where Dalton had shoved him into the wall. He walked to the window and looked out at his city. Somewhere out there, Dalton was sitting in a federal holding cell, his life in pieces. Martinez was probably crying. Walker was probably praying. Morrison felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a grim determination. This was the easy part. 3 bad cops caught red-handed with video evidence. The hard part was coming rooting out the corruption that had protected them for years, rebuilding trust with a community that had every reason to hate the police, and doing it all while facing resistance from officers who saw him as the enemy. His phone buzzed. Email from Chen. Subject line, everything. Morrison opened it. Spreadsheets, documents, photographs. 3 weeks of investigation condensed into gigabytes of data. Names, dates, patterns of abuse. Officers who'd been accused multiple times with no consequences. Supervisors who buried complaints. Union reps who threatened witnesses. The real work was beginning. A knock on the door. Come in. Officer Patterson entered the young cop who'd defended Dalton. He looked like he'd been crying. Chief, I need to talk to you. Morrison gestured to a chair. Sit. Patterson sat, hands trembling. I lied in there. When I said maybe it was a misunderstanding, I knew it wasn't. I've watched Dalton operate for 2 years. I've seen him rough people up. I've seen Martinez lie on reports. I've stayed quiet because I was scared. Scared of what? Of being labeled a rat, of being frozen out, of being the guy who doesn't have backup when things go bad. Patterson looked up, eyes red. But I can't do this anymore. I became a cop to help people, and instead, I'm watching them get hurt. So I'm here. I'm talking. Tell me what you need. Morrison studied him. 25 years old, maybe younger. Idealistic enough to still have a conscience, young enough to course correct. I need names. I need incidents. I need everything you've seen that made you sick, but you stayed quiet about. Patterson pulled out a notebook. I wrote it all down 3 months ago, just in case. I never thought I'd actually use it, but... He handed the notebook to Morrison. Page after page of dates, names, allegations, beatings, false arrests, evidence planting, all documented in neat handwriting. Morrison felt something shift in his chest. Not quite hope, but close. Officer Patterson, you just saved your career. Maybe your soul, too. What happens now? Now you go back to work. You act normal. You don't tell anyone about this conversation. And when IA starts interviewing people, you tell them everything. Understand? Yes, sir. And Patterson? Thank you. This took courage. Patterson left. Morrison opened the notebook and started reading. With each page, his expression grew darker. This was worse than he'd thought. Much worse. His phone rang. Unknown number. Morrison? Chief? This is Deputy Commissioner Hargrove. We need to talk about the incident this morning. Hargrove. The Deputy Commissioner was notorious for protecting bad cops, for valuing loyalty over integrity. What about it? Morrison asked carefully. The optics are terrible. A police chief getting assaulted on his first day, it makes the department look incompetent. The department is incompetent. That's why I'm here. There's talk of sweeping this under the rug. Dalton was a decorated officer, 17-year veteran. Maybe we frame this as a tragic misunderstanding. No. Silence on the line. Excuse me. Hargrove's voice dropped to dangerous. I said no. There will be no sweeping, no reframing, no protecting Dalton. He assaulted a citizen, me, on camera with witnesses. He's going to trial. He's going to prison. And anyone who tries to interfere with that process is going to join him. You're making a mistake, Morrison. You're turning officers against you. You need allies in this department. I need officers who follow the law. If that makes me enemies, so be it. You're digging your own grave. Maybe, but I'll die with my integrity intact. Can you say the same? Morrison hung up before Hargrove could respond. His computer chimed. Email from Rodriguez. Personnel files attached. Complaint records still compiling. Morrison opened the first file. Officer Michael Santos. 8 years on the force. 12 complaints. 0 discipline. Complaint 1 excessive force during traffic stop. Complaint 2 racial profiling. Complaint 3 verbal abuse of suspect. The pattern was unmistakable. And Santos wasn't unique. File after file showed the same thing, officers racking up complaints with no consequences. Another knock. Hayes entered without waiting. Her face was pale. Chief, we have a problem. What kind? The union. They're calling an emergency meeting. They want officers to refuse to cooperate with the IA investigation. They're claiming it's a witch hunt. Morrison stood. When's the meeting? 6 p.m. at the Union Hall. I'm going. Hayes blinked. Sir, that's not advisable. The union president, Carl Briggs, he's very protective of officers, and he hates outsiders. I don't care what he hates. If he's trying to obstruct my investigation, we're going to have a conversation. Chief, it could get ugly. Good. I'm tired of pretty lies. Let's have some ugly truth for a change. Morrison grabbed his jacket. The bloodstain on his shirt was still visible, a dark rust color now. He decided to leave it. Let Briggs and his union thugs see what their decorated officer had done. They walked to the parking garage. Hayes drove, navigating through afternoon traffic toward the Union Hall on the east side. Can I ask you something, Chief Chotoyu? Hayes said as they waited at a red light. Go ahead. Why did you take this job? You could have stayed in Metro. You were respected there. Had a good team. Why come here to a department that hates you? Morrison watched the city pass by outside the window. You know what the worst part of being a cop is, Captain? It's not the danger. It's not the hours. It's watching good people lose faith in you because bad cops keep destroying that faith. It's seeing communities that should trust you treat you like the enemy because you've earned that treatment. I took this job because I'm tired of watching us fail, and if fixing that means making enemies, I'll make enemies. The Union Hall was a squat brick building with barred windows and a faded sign. Morrison and Hayes pushed through the front door into a lobby that smelled like stale beer and old cigarettes. Voices echoed from the main hall, angry voices. Morrison followed the sound. The hall was packed. Maybe 100 officers in uniform and civilian clothes. At the front, standing on a small stage, was Carl Briggs. 55, thick neck face red with perpetual anger. He looked like exactly what he was, a bully with institutional power. Briggs was mid-speech when Morrison entered. Can't let some outsider come in here and destroy careers based on lies from criminals. Dalton's one of us, Martinez is one of us, and this so-called Chief Strom is standing right behind you, Morrison said loudly. The room went silent. 100 heads turned. Briggs spun around, his face going from red to purple. Well, well, Briggs said into the microphone. Look who decided to crash our meeting. The man who got 3 good cops arrested on his first day. Morrison walked down the center aisle. Officers parted like water. He climbed the stairs to the stage and faced Briggs directly. 3 good cops, is that what you call officers who assault unarmed citizens? I call them officers who are doing their job. You set them up. I stood on a public sidewalk. They chose to assault me. That's not a setup. That's called consequences. The crowd murmured, some nodding. Most hostile. Briggs leaned close, his breath hot and foul. You think you're going to come into my city and destroy my officers? Think again. We've buried better men than you. Morrison smiled. Is that a threat, Mr. Briggs? It's a promise. Good, because I'm very good at keeping promises, too. Here's mine. Every officer who committed misconduct is going down. Every supervisor who protected them is going down. And every union rep who tries to obstruct my investigation is going down with them. You want to bury me, get in line. But know that I'm bringing shovels enough for all of us. The room exploded, officers shouting, some in support, most in rage. Briggs's face was apoplectic. Morrison grabbed the microphone from his hand. Listen up, all of you. I know you're scared. I know this feels like an attack. But ask yourselves, when did protecting bad cops become more important than being good cops? When did loyalty to each other override loyalty to the community we serve? Someone in the back yelled, "We protect our own." That's exactly the problem, Morrison shot back. You protect your own even when your own is wrong. Even when your own is a criminal, that code of silence is killing this department and destroying lives, and I'm here to break it. More shouting. An officer near the front stood. You got punched once, and now you think you understand what we deal with every day. You have no idea what it's like out there. Morrison's voice went cold. I was a street cop for 15 years before I made captain. I've been shot at, stabbed, had my skull fractured by a pipe. I've arrested murderers, rapists, and gang leaders. I've held dying partners in my arms. So don't tell me I don't understand the streets. I understand them better than you ever will. The difference is I never forgot that we're supposed to be the good guys. The room had gone quiet again. Some officers looked ashamed, others defiant. Briggs grabbed for the microphone. Morrison pulled it away. One more thing, Morrison said. Starting tomorrow, any officer who refuses to cooperate with the IA investigation will be suspended without pay pending termination. Any union rep who advises officers to obstruct will be charged with obstruction of justice. And any officer who retaliates against a whistleblower will be fired immediately and prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. This department is changing. You can change with it, or you can get out of the way. Your choice. Morrison handed the microphone back to Briggs and walked off the stage. The crowd parted again, but this time some of the faces looked different, less hostile, more thoughtful. Hayes was waiting by the door. They walked out together into the cooling evening air. That was either very brave or very stupid, Hayes said. Probably both. Morrison's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You're a dead man. He showed it to Hayes. We need to report this on me, she said immediately. No, we document it and keep moving. Threats mean I'm getting close to something that scares them. I want to know what that something is. They drove back to the precinct in silence. Morrison stared out the window, watching his city disappear into dusk. Somewhere out there were good cops trying to do their jobs. Somewhere out there were bad cops planning their next move. and somewhere in between was a community that had stopped believing either existed. His job was to prove them wrong. Back at the precinct, Morrison worked until midnight, reading files, cross-referencing complaints, building cases. Patterson's notebook proved invaluable. It corroborated patterns Morrison had suspected but couldn't prove. Officer Santos wasn't just collecting complaints. He was targeting specific demographics: young black men, Hispanic teenagers, always in high-crime areas where witnesses were scared to come forward. Officer Jennifer Walsh had a different pattern: domestic violence calls where she'd arrest the victim instead of the abuser, 7 times in 3 years. 7 times with the same excuse: victim was uncooperative. Sergeant Kovac, the one who'd called the complaints bullshit, he was the supervisor who signed off on most of the questionable reports. He'd buried more complaints than any other supervisor in the department's history. Morrison made a list: 17 names, 17 officers who needed to go. At 12:30 a.m. his phone rang. Chen again. "Why are you still awake?" Morrison asked. "Same reason you are. I've been digging into your Deputy Commissioner Hargrove. James, you need to be careful. He's connected to half the city council. He's got dirt on judges, prosecutors, even the mayor. If you go after him..." "I'm not going after him, not yet, but if he gets in my way, all bets are off." "You're playing a dangerous game." "I'm not playing. This is war, Marcus, and I intend to win." Morrison hung up and looked at his list of names. 17 careers about to end. 17 officers who'd wake up tomorrow not knowing their world was about to collapse. He felt no satisfaction, just a grim certainty that this was necessary. His phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another text: "Last warning, back off or else." Morrison deleted it and kept working. Outside his window, the city slept, unaware that its police department was about to tear itself apart. And somewhere in that city, Rick Dalton sat in a cell, his wet pants long since dried, his career long since dead, wondering how a simple punch had destroyed everything he'd built over 17 years. The answer was simple: it wasn't the punch that destroyed him. It was 17 years of believing he'd never have to answer for it. Morrison woke at 5 a.m. to his phone ringing. He'd fallen asleep at his desk, head on his arms, Patterson's notebook still open in front of him. "Morrison?" "Chief, it's Hayes. We have a situation." He was instantly alert. "Talk to me." Officer Santos didn't show up for his shift. His wife called dispatch 20 minutes ago, said he left the house at midnight and never came back. His service weapon is missing. Morrison stood his body screaming in protest. His jaw felt like someone had embedded broken glass in it. Where was he supposed to be? "Night Patrol Sector 7. We've been calling his radio. Nothing." "Put out an ATL. All units looking for him. And Hayes assume he's armed and dangerous." "You think he'll do something stupid?" "I think he's a cop facing federal charges who knows his life is over. That makes him very dangerous. I'm coming in." Morrison splashed water on his face, changed his blood-stained shirt, and drove to the precinct through empty pre-dawn streets. His phone buzzed constantly. Updates from Hayes. Check-ins from Chen. More anonymous threats. He ignored the threats and focused on Santos. The precinct was chaos when he arrived. Dispatch had every available unit searching. Santos's wife was in an interview room crying, and sitting in Morrison's office uninvited was Deputy Commissioner Hargrove. "We need to talk," Hargrove said without preamble. "Not now. I have a missing officer." "That's what I'm here about. This is your fault, Morrison. You pushed too hard, too fast. Now Santos is probably eating his gun somewhere because you destroyed his career." Morrison felt rage spike hot in his chest. "I destroyed his career. He destroyed his own career with 8 years of misconduct. 12 complaints. Hargrove, 12. And you want to blame me for enforcing basic accountability? I want you to back off before this gets worse." "It's already worse. It's been worse for years. You just pretended not to see it." Hargrove stood his face red. "You self-righteous son of a..." Hayes burst through the door. "Chief, we found Santos's patrol car, abandoned at Miller's Point." Morrison's blood went cold. Miller's Point was a cliff overlooking the harbor. Popular suicide spot. "Get rescue units there now," Morrison ordered. "Coast Guard divers the works." Hargrove grabbed Morrison's arm. "You're going to get him killed." Morrison jerked free. "He made his choices. I'm just making him answer for them." He pushed past Hargrove and ran to the garage. Hayes was already in her car, engine running. Morrison jumped in and they roared out of the parking lot, lights flashing. The drive to Miller's Point took 12 minutes that felt like 12 hours. Morrison's mind raced through scenarios, each one worse than the last. Santos with a gun to his head. Santos already in the water. Santos waiting in ambush for the cops who destroyed his life. They arrived to find Santos's patrol car parked at the cliff edge driver's door, open engine still running. No Santos. "Check the edge," Morrison said. "Carefully." 2 officers approached the cliff with flashlights. Morrison watched the dark water below, looking for any sign of movement. "Chief," one of the officers called. "There's no body, and look at this." Morrison walked over. On the ground near the car was Santos's badge, his radio, and his nameplate, arranged carefully, deliberately, but no gun. "He's not here," Morrison said quietly. "This is a message." "What kind of message?" Hayes asked. "He's telling us he's done being a cop, but he's not done fighting." Morrison's phone rang. "Unknown number," he answered. "Chief Morrison?" The voice was male, strained, desperate. "Who is this Michael Santos? I figured you'd find my car eventually." Morrison's hand tightened on the phone. "Officer Santos, wherever you are, we can talk about this. Come in, let's figure this out." Santos laughed bitterly. "Figure what out? You've already decided I'm guilty. You and your investigation, you don't care about the truth. The truth is in the complaint files. 12 of them Santos. 12 people who said you hurt them. 12 criminals who lied to get out of charges. You weren't there. You don't know what it's like dealing with these people day after day, getting spit on, cursed at, threatened. So you hurt them back. That's your defense. I did my job, and now you're destroying me for it." Morrison walked away from the other officer's voice low and urgent. "Santos, listen to me. If you've done nothing wrong, come in, face the investigation, clear your name. But if you run, if you hurt someone, you're proving me right. I'm already proven guilty in your eyes. You made up your mind before you even met me." Santos's voice cracked. "I have 2 kids, Morrison, 2 little girls who think their daddy's a hero. What do I tell them now that some chief from out of town decided I'm a monster? Tell them the truth, whatever that is." "The truth? You want the truth?" Santos's voice rose. "The truth is, this job breaks you. It takes good people and turns them into something else. You stop seeing people as people. You see threats, problems, animals that need to be controlled, and the department encourages it. They train us to be aggressive, to dominate every situation, and then they act shocked when we do exactly what they taught us." Morrison closed his eyes. Santos wasn't wrong about that part. The training was broken. The system was broken. But that didn't excuse the violence. "Where are you, Santos?" "Somewhere you'll never find me. But don't worry, Chief. You'll see me again, real soon. You and everyone who helped destroy my life." The line went dead. Morrison turned to Hayes. "He's going to do something. Issue a department-wide alert. Santos is considered armed and dangerous. No one approaches him alone." "You think he'll come after you?" "I think he'll come after anyone he blames. Me. IA investigators. Maybe Hargrove for not protecting him. Put guards on key personnel, 24/7. They drove back to the precinct in tense silence. Morrison's mind was racing through possibilities, trying to anticipate Santos's next move. A man with nothing to lose, and police training was one of the most dangerous things in the world. Back at the office, Morrison found 17 messages waiting. 10 from officers wanting to talk. 4 from reporters, 3 more threats. He started with the officers. First was Officer Janet Mills, 42, 19 years on the force. She sat across from him with her hands shaking. "I should have come forward years ago," she said. "I've watched Santos operate. I've watched him plant evidence. I've watched him beat suspects, and I stayed quiet because I was scared." "Scared of what?" "Of being labeled a rat, of losing my pension, of ending up like Officer Bradley." Morrison's attention sharpened. "Who's Officer Bradley?" Mills looked surprised. "You don't know, 5 years ago, Officer Tom Bradley reported Sergeant Kovac for falsifying overtime records. 2 weeks later, Bradley was responding to a domestic call and requested backup. Backup never came. He got stabbed 3 times, nearly died. When he tried to file a complaint about the delayed backup, it got buried. He took early retirement 6 months later." Morrison felt ice in his veins. "You're saying officers deliberately withheld backup as retaliation. I'm saying I know 3 cops who were on duty that night who ignored his calls, and I'm saying Kovac was one of them." Morrison made notes. "I need names. Everyone who was involved." Mills gave him 5 names. 3 were on Morrison's list already. 2 weren't. The list grew to 19. Second interview was Officer David Park, 31, 8 years on the force. He brought a cardboard box filled with documents. "What's all this?" Morrison asked. "Evidence. I've been collecting it for 3 years. Reports that got altered, complaint forms that disappeared, witness statements that were never filed. I kept copies of everything." Why didn't you report this? Park laughed without humor. To who internal affairs, they're in on it. Half the IA investigators used to work at District 9. They protect their friends. The whole system is designed to cover itself. Morrison opened the box. Hundreds of pages. Years of documentation. If even half of it was legitimate, the corruption went deeper than he'd imagined. Officer Park, this took incredible courage. Why now? Because I watched you take a punch this morning and keep standing. I watched you arrest your own officers on your first day. That told me you're different. That maybe finally someone gives a damn about doing the right thing. Third interview was Sergeant Linda Hayes, not Captain Hayes, her younger sister. Morrison hadn't realized they were related. Linda was a 20-year veteran with a spotless record. She sat down and got straight to business. I'm here to tell you about the Monday Club. What's the Monday Club? It's what they call themselves. About 15 officers who meet every Monday night at a bar called Hannigan's. They drink, they trade stories, and they decide how to handle problems. Problems like witnesses who won't shut up. Complaints that get too much attention. Officers who ask too many questions. Morrison felt his pulse quicken. This is a conspiracy. This is how District 9 has operated for 20 years. They protect each other, they punish outsiders, and anyone who threatens the club gets dealt with. Dealt with how? Bradley's stabbing was no accident. The backup that never came. That was the club sending a message. Santos going missing, I guarantee you he called someone in the club for help. They're hiding him right now. Give me names. Linda gave him 12. 7 were already on his list. 5 were new, including 2 sergeants and a lieutenant. The list grew to 24. By noon, Morrison had interviewed 15 officers. The picture emerging was worse than any nightmare. District 9 wasn't just a bad precinct. It was a criminal organization operating under color of law. Evidence planting, witness intimidation, assault, theft. Even allegations of sexual assault by officers who knew their victims wouldn't be believed. And at the center of it all was the Monday Club, a core group of corrupt cops who controlled the precinct through fear and violence. Morrison called an emergency meeting with Hayes Rodriguez and the 3 IA investigators who'd arrived from headquarters. We have a systemic criminal conspiracy, Morrison said without preamble. 24 officers involved, possibly more. Evidence of racketeering civil rights violations, assault, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. This goes beyond internal discipline. We need the FBI. The lead IA investigator, a sharp woman named Sarah Kim, nodded. I've been documenting everything. We have enough for RICO charges. How long to build the case? Normally 6 months, but with the evidence Officer Park provided and the witness statements, maybe 3 weeks if we move fast. We don't have 3 weeks. Santos is out there planning something, and the Monday Club knows we're coming for them. They'll destroy evidence, intimidate witnesses, maybe worse. Rodriguez spoke up. What are you suggesting, Chief? Simultaneous arrests, everyone on the list. Dawn raid federal warrants the full hammer. We take them all down at once before they can coordinate a response. Kim looked uncertain. That's risky. If we move too fast and the case falls apart in court, if we move too slow, witnesses die, evidence disappears, and Santos might kill someone. Morrison's voice was steel. We move fast, we move hard, and we don't give them time to react. His phone rang. The precinct desk. Chief, there's someone here to see you. Says it's urgent. Won't give a name. Send them up. 2 minutes later, a woman in her 60s entered his office. She looked terrified, but determined. Chief Morrison, my name is Carol Bradley. My son Tom was a police officer here 5 years ago. Morrison stood. Officer Bradley, I just heard about what happened to him. Then you know they tried to kill him, and you know they got away with it. Her voice shook with rage. Tom's never been the same. PTSD, depression, he can't work, can't sleep. My son gave everything to this job, and they destroyed him for trying to do the right thing. Mrs. Bradley, I promise you. Don't promise me anything. I've heard promises from 3 chiefs before you. They all said they'd investigate. They all did nothing. I'm here because I don't trust you, but I don't have a choice. If you're really different, if you're really going to clean this up, you need to know something. She pulled a flash drive from her purse. What's on this? Morrison asked. Audio recordings. Tom recorded everything after the stabbing. Conversations with other officers, threats, admissions. He was going to go to the FBI, but then they destroyed his career and he just gave up. I kept the recordings, just in case. Just in case someone like you showed up. Morrison took the flash drive with trembling hands. Mrs. Bradley, this could be the evidence that breaks this case wide open. I don't care about the case. I care about justice. My son almost died because he tried to be a good cop. Make them pay for that. After she left, Morrison plugged in the flash drive. 43 audio files. He started with the first one. Officer Bradley's voice shaky but clear. This is Tom Bradley. Today is March 15th. I'm recording this because I'm scared. Yesterday, Sergeant Kovac pulled me aside after roll call. He said, "You need to learn when to keep your mouth shut." I asked what he meant. He said, "You know what you did? Fix it or face the consequences." Morrison listened to all 43 recordings. By the end, his hands were shaking with rage. Officers discussing how to handle Bradley, plans to isolate him, discussions about teaching him a lesson. And in recording 37, a voice Morrison recognized from the Union Hall Carl Briggs. Bradley's a problem that needs solving. We can't have rats running around thinking they can destroy good cops. Someone needs to handle him. Make it look like an accident. 2 weeks later, Bradley was stabbed. Morrison called Kim back in. Listen to these. When she finished, her face was pale. This is conspiracy to commit murder. And we have it on tape. This changes everything. We're not just talking about corrupt cops anymore. We're talking about attempted murder under color of law. Morrison's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You should check your car before you drive it. He showed it to Kim. That's a direct threat, she said. Or a warning. Either way, we need to move faster. I want warrants drafted by end of day. I want arrest teams assembled, and I want surveillance on every officer on that list. Chief, we don't have the manpower. Then we get the FBI involved now. Today. I don't care what it takes. Morrison called the FBI field office. Explained the situation to a skeptical agent who became less skeptical as Morrison described the evidence. An hour later, 2 federal agents were sitting in his office reviewing documents. By 6 p.m., they'd agreed to a joint task force. By 8 p.m., Morrison was in a conference room with 10 FBI agents, 5 IA investigators, and Captain Hayes planning the largest corruption bust in the city's history. We hit them at 5 a.m. 3 days from now, the FBI lead agent Marcus Webb said. Simultaneous arrests, 24 targets. We'll have SWAT teams backing up every arrest team in case of resistance. What about Santos? Morrison asked. We're working our informant network. Someone's hiding him. We'll find him. But Morrison wasn't so sure. Santos had police training. He knew how investigations worked. He could stay hidden for months if he wanted to, unless he decided to surface on his own terms. Morrison left the meeting at midnight and walked to his car. He checked underneath it, carefully checking for explosives or tampering. Nothing. The threat had been just that, a threat meant to scare him. It wasn't working. He drove home to the small apartment he'd rented near the precinct. Hadn't even unpacked yet. Boxes everywhere. He fell onto the bed fully clothed and was asleep in seconds. He dreamed of Dalton's punch, of Bradley's stabbing, of Santos's voice on the phone desperate and dangerous, of 24 corrupt cops realizing their world was ending. He woke at 3 a.m. to his phone ringing. Morrison? Chief, it's Webb. We found Santos. Morrison sat up. Where? Hannigan's bar. He's inside right now with 5 other officers. Looks like they're planning something. I'm on my way. Chief, we've got this. You don't need to... Those are my officers. I'm coming. Morrison dressed in 60 seconds and drove to Hannigan's. The bar was in a rough part of town surrounded by abandoned warehouses. A dozen unmarked cars were parked a block away. FBI agents and tactical officers in body armor. Webb met him at the command vehicle. We have eyes inside. Santos is at a table with Sergeant Kovac, Officer Martinez's father. He's also on the job, and 3 others. They're armed. What are they planning? We can't hear the conversation, but they keep looking at a map of the city. Our bet, they're planning to hit someone. Maybe a witness, maybe an IA investigator, maybe you. Morrison looked at the bar. How do you want to play this? We wait until they leave, then take them down in the parking lot, safer than going in. What if they're planning to hit someone tonight? What if while we're sitting here, they're deciding who to kill? Webb hesitated. It's too risky to go in now. Then I'll go in alone. Chief, that's suicide. Morrison was already walking toward the bar. Behind him, he heard Webb cursing and ordering agents to get into position. Morrison pushed through the bar's front door. The place was mostly empty, a few drunks at the bar. And in the back corner, Santos and 5 other men huddled over a table covered with papers. They looked up as Morrison approached. Santos's hand moved toward his waist. Don't, Morrison said calmly. FBI's outside. Snipers have you targeted. You pull that gun, you die. All of you die. Kovac stood slowly. You've got some balls, Morrison, walking in here alone. I'm not alone, and you're not walking out of here free men. Morrison stopped 10 feet from their table. It's over, all of it. We have the evidence. We have the recordings. We have witnesses. You can come quietly, or you can make this harder on yourselves. Santos laughed wild and bitter. Evidence. What evidence? You've got nothing but lies from criminals. I've got audio recordings of you planning to kill Officer Bradley. I've got documents showing you planted evidence on 47 suspects. I've got witness statements from 15 officers who watched you operate. You're done, Santos. Accept it. I'm not done until I say I'm done. Santos pulled his gun, but he didn't point it at Morrison. He pointed it at his own head. I'm not going to prison, Santos said, tears streaming down his face. I'm not letting my daughters watch me rot in a cell. This is how it ends. Morrison raised his hands. Michael, don't. Your daughters need their father. Even if you go to prison, they need to know you're alive. They need to be able to visit you, talk to you. Don't take that away from them. They'll hate me anyway, once they know what I did, what I became. Maybe, but at least they'll have the chance to forgive you. You do this, you take that chance away forever. The gun shook in Santos's hand. Around him, the other officers were frozen, unsure what to do. I was a good cop once, Santos whispered. I really was. I wanted to help people. When did that change? When did I become the thing I used to fight? It changed slowly, one compromise at a time. One use of excessive force that you justified. One false report that seemed harmless. Until one day you looked in the mirror and didn't recognize yourself. Morrison took a step closer. But it's not too late to stop, to take responsibility, to show your daughters that even when you mess up, even when you fall, you can still choose to do the right thing. The right thing. The right thing is to eat this bullet and spare them the shame. The right thing is to face what you've done, to own it, to serve your time with dignity. That's harder than pulling that trigger, but it's what heroes do, and your daughters still think you're a hero. Don't prove them wrong. Santos's hand shook harder. The gun wavered. Put it down, Michael, Morrison said softly. Just put it down. For a long moment, nothing happened. The bar was silent except for Santos's ragged breathing. Then slowly, Santos lowered the gun, placed it on the table, and started crying in earnest, his whole body shaking with sobs. The FBI burst through the door, weapons raised. Within seconds, all 6 men were in handcuffs. Webb pulled Morrison aside. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen a police chief do. Probably, but it worked. This time, don't do it again. Morrison watched as they led Santos out. The man who'd been so aggressive on the phone now looked small, broken, defeated. 24 officers arrested would soon be 25. Morrison drove back to the precinct as dawn broke over the city. His broken, corrupt, beautiful city that deserved better than it had been getting. 3 days later, at exactly 5 a.m., arrest teams hit 24 locations simultaneously. Doors were kicked in, officers were pulled from their beds, rights were read, handcuffs clicked. By 6 a.m., the Monday Club was in custody. By 7 a.m., the media had the story. By 8 a.m., it was national news. By 9 a.m., Morrison was standing in front of cameras again, his jaw still bruised but healing, announcing the largest police corruption case in the city's history. Today, we took the first real step toward healing. Come, he said. 25 officers are in custody. More arrests may follow as the investigation continues. But let me be clear, this is not an attack on police. This is a defense of what police should be. These officers betrayed their oath. They betrayed the community. And most of all, they betrayed the thousands of good officers who do this job with honor every single day. Someone in the press pool shouted, "Chief, do you think this will restore trust in the police department?" Morrison paused. Trust isn't restored in a day. It's earned back slowly, through consistent action and accountability. We've got a long road ahead. But today, we took the first step. And I promise you, we won't stop until this department is worthy of the community it serves. Back in his office, Morrison collapsed into his chair. His phone was ringing non-stop. Reporters, city council members, the mayor congratulating him. Chen checking in. Hayes entered without knocking. She looked exhausted, but satisfied. How many officers do we have left? Morrison asked. 17 were arrested. 8 resigned rather than face investigation. That leaves us short-staffed by 25%. We'll hire better people, start the recruitment process. Chief, there's something else. Officer Walker. You remember him from that first day? The rookie who watched Dalton hit me. He wants to talk to you, says it's important. Walker entered looking 10 years older than he had just days ago. He sat without being invited. "I need to resign," Walker said. "Why?" "Because I'm a coward. I watched Dalton assault you and I did nothing. I knew it was wrong, but I was too scared to stop it. That makes me guilty too." Morrison studied him. "You're right. You are guilty. You had a choice, and you made the wrong one." Walker nodded miserably. "So you'll accept my resignation?" "No, I'm rejecting it." Walker looked up confused. "You made a mistake," Morrison continued. "A bad one, but you're 23 years old with 6 months on the job and you were facing pressure from a 17-year veteran. That doesn't excuse what you did, but it explains it. And unlike Dalton, unlike Santos, you feel remorse. You know you screwed up. That means you can still be saved. I don't deserve to be a cop." "Maybe not, but I'm going to give you a chance to earn it. You're going to be assigned to training for the next 6 months. You're going to learn what it really means to be a police officer, and you're going to be a mentor to new recruits, teaching them not to make your mistake. You're going to spend your career proving that one moment of cowardice doesn't define you. Can you do that?" Walker's eyes were wet. "Yes, sir, I can do that." "Then get out of my office and get to work." After Walker left, Morrison allowed himself one moment of satisfaction. One corrupt organization destroyed. 25 bad cops off the street. 24 more who might think twice before violating someone's rights. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough until every cop in every precinct understood that the badge was a responsibility, not a license, but it was a start. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Morrison?" "Chief, this is Rick Dalton." Morrison sat up straight. "How did you get a phone in lockup?" "Lawyer's phone. I convinced him to let me make a call. I need to talk to you." "About what?" "About a deal. I don't make deals with people who assault me. Not for me. I'm done. I know that. But I know things. Things about people higher up the chain than the Monday Club. People who are going to come after you if you don't stop them first." Morrison's pulse quickened. "Who, huh?" "Not over the phone. You visit me in person, alone, and I'll tell you everything. Names, dates, evidence. Everything I know about how deep this really goes." "Why would you do that?" Dalton's laugh was bitter. "Because I'm going to prison for 17 years. Might as well burn down everyone who helped create the system that destroyed me. Misery loves company, Chief, and I'm feeling very miserable." Morrison considered. This could be a trap, or it could be the key to rooting out corruption at even higher levels. "I'll think about it." "Don't think too long. Some of these people don't wait around for investigations. They act, and you're their #1 target." The line went dead. Morrison sat in his office as the sun climbed higher, thinking about everything that had happened in just 5 days. 5 days since he'd stood on that sidewalk and let Dalton punch him. 5 days since he'd started this war. He thought about Bradley almost killed for being honest. About Santos destroying himself to avoid consequences. About Walker given a second chance to be better. About 25 cops who'd chosen power over principle and were now paying the price. And he thought about all the people they'd hurt over the years. The victims who'd been beaten. The innocent people arrested on false charges. The witnesses intimidated. The families destroyed. 5 days wasn't nearly enough time to fix what had been broken for 20 years. But it was a damn good start. Morrison straightened his tie and walked out of his office. He had a long list of people to see cases to build and a department to rebuild. The war was far from over. Morrison visited Dalton 3 days later in a federal detention facility 40 miles outside the city. He went alone despite Hayes' protests, despite Webb's warnings that it could be a setup. The meeting room was small and cold. Dalton sat on one side of a metal table wearing an orange jumpsuit that seemed 2 sizes too big. He'd lost weight. His eyes were hollow. "You look like hell," Morrison said, sitting down. "Prison food doesn't agree with me. Neither does knowing I threw away 17 years for one stupid punch." Dalton's voice was flat, empty of the rage that had burned so hot on the precinct steps. "Thanks for coming." "You said you had information." "I do, but first I need to know something. When you stood there that morning, when I was shoving you, threatening you, you knew who you were. You knew what would happen. Why didn't you just tell me?" Morrison considered the question. "Because I needed to see it. Needed to experience what civilians experience when officers like you decide they're above the law. I could have flashed my badge and watched you scramble, but that wouldn't have changed anything. You'd have been more careful, hidden it better. This way you showed everyone exactly what you are. A monster. A bully. There's a difference. Monsters can't help what they are. Bullies choose it every day." Dalton flinched. My daughters won't talk to me, won't even take my calls. My wife filed for divorce yesterday. I've lost everything. You lost it when you threw that punch. Maybe before. Maybe years ago when you first decided the badge gave you permission to hurt people. Morrison leaned forward. Now tell me what you know. Dalton pulled out a sheet of paper covered in handwriting. The Monday Club wasn't the top of the pyramid. It was the middle. Above us were captains, deputy chiefs, even people in the DA's office. Names. Captain Frank Riley. He ran interference whenever complaints got too loud, made evidence disappear, intimidated witnesses. He's been doing it for 23 years. Morrison knew Riley, respected veteran, decorated, 2 citations for bravery. You're sure about this? I watched him destroy 3 separate investigations into Santos, personally destroyed them. Files vanished. Witnesses recanted. He's protected more dirty cops than anyone in the department. Who else but Deputy Chief Marcus Vaughn? He approved budgets that funded the Monday Club's operation, overtime fraud that netted over $2 million in 5 years. He got a cut of everything. Morrison felt sick. Vaughn was the number 3 man in the entire department. If he was corrupt, the rot went all the way to the top. And in the DA's office, Assistant DA Rachel Simmons, she prosecuted cases we brought her no questions asked. Even when the evidence was clearly fabricated. She knew. She had to know. But she got convictions, and we got commendations, and everyone was happy except the innocent people we sent to prison. Morrison wrote down every name. Why are you telling me this? Because I'm already done. But I don't want to go down alone. If I'm a monster they created. They trained me, protected me, encouraged me. Then the moment I got caught, they all vanished. Vaughn won't return my lawyer's calls. Riley told my wife I deserve everything I get. Simmons issued a statement saying she's appalled by my actions. Dalton's voice shook with rage. They used me up and threw me away, so I'm returning the favor. This is all allegations. I need proof. I've got proof. I kept insurance, copies of altered reports with Riley's signature, email chains showing Vaughn approving fraudulent overtime, recordings of conversations with Simmons where she coached us on how to make bad arrests stick. Dalton smiled grimly. I wasn't the only one who didn't trust the system. I just kept better records. Where is this evidence? Safety deposit box, Bank of America on 5th Street, box 447. Here's the key. Dalton slid a small silver key across the table. My lawyer has the authorization paperwork. Tell him I sent you. Morrison pocketed the key. This better not be a setup. It's not. I'm done playing games. I just want to watch them burn the way I'm burning. Morrison stood to leave. Dalton called after him. Chief? One more thing. Watch your back. Deputy Commissioner Hargrove is in this deeper than anyone. He's the one who protected all of us for years. And he's the one most desperate to shut you down before you expose him. Hargrove's already tried threatening me. Didn't work? He won't stop at threats. When Hargrove wants someone gone, they disappear. There was a reporter 7 years ago digging into police corruption. Jenny Martinez. She was going to publish a massive expose. Then her apartment caught fire. Electrical fault, they said. She barely escaped with her life. All her notes, all her evidence destroyed. She left town a week later and never wrote about cops again. Morrison felt cold spread through his chest. You're saying Hargrove tried to kill her. I'm saying the fire happened 2 days after Hargrove visited her apartment to discuss her concerns. And I'm saying you should check your smoke detectors. Morrison left the detention center with his mind racing. If Dalton was telling the truth, the corruption went far beyond District 9. It infected the highest levels of the department and reached into the district attorney's office itself. He called Webb from his car. I need warrants, multiple targets, high-level targets. How high? Deputy Chief, Captain, Assistant DA. Webb whistled. That's going to be politically complicated. I don't care about politics, I care about justice. You need to care about politics or you'll get shut down before you can act. These people have connections, they'll fight back. Let them fight. I've got evidence. What kind of evidence? The kind that ends careers. I'm heading to a bank now. Meet me there in 30 minutes. Morrison drove to the Bank of America on 5th Street. Dalton's lawyer, an exhausted-looking public defender named Tom Hansen, met him in the lobby with authorization paperwork. My client insisted you'd be coming, Hansen said. He also insisted I tell you to move fast, said people are already trying to access the box. What people? He wouldn't say, just kept repeating that you needed to get there before they did. Morrison's instincts screamed danger. He showed his badge to the bank manager, a nervous woman in her 50s who looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. "I need access to box 447 immediately." "Of course, Chief, right this way." She led him to the vault, her hands shaking as she used her key in combination with Dalton's key to open the box. Inside was a thick manila envelope stuffed with documents and 3 USB drives. Morrison was reaching for the envelope when his phone rang. Hayes. "Chief, we have a situation. Someone just tried to access Rick Dalton's safety deposit box." Morrison froze. "When 20 minutes ago, different bank branch. They had forged authorization papers. The bank manager got suspicious and called us." "Who was it?" "Security footage shows a man in his 50s. We're running facial recognition now." Morrison looked at the box in front of him. "Hayes, I think someone's trying to get to Dalton's evidence before we can. I'm at the bank now. Send backup. Armed backup." "Already on the way. ETA 7 minutes. Morrison grabbed the envelope and USB drive, stuffing them in his jacket. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Heavy, running. He turned to see 2 men in ski masks entering the vault area, guns drawn. The bank manager screamed. Morrison pushed her behind him and drew his own weapon. "Police, drop your weapons!" The first man fired. The bullet hit the wall 3 inches from Morrison's head. Morrison returned fire, hitting the man in the shoulder. He went down hard. The second man grabbed the bank manager, using her as a shield. "Drop the gun or she dies." Morrison's training took over. Stay calm. Assess. Find an opening. "You don't want to do this," Morrison said, keeping his gun trained on the visible parts of the gunman. "This is a federal offense. Murder of a police chief. That's death penalty territory. We're already dead if we don't get that evidence, so drop the gun or I drop her." Morrison calculated angles. The gunman's head was partially visible behind the manager, but if he missed, the manager died. "Who sent you?" Morrison asked, buying time. "Someone who wants you to understand that you've gone far enough. Take the hint and walk away." "Or what?" "Or the next bullet doesn't miss." Behind the gunman, Morrison saw movement. Webb and 2 FBI agents entering the vault, silently, weapons raised. Morrison kept talking, keeping the gunman's attention forward. "Let's say I walk away. You think whoever sent you is going to let you live. You're loose ends, witnesses. He'll kill you the moment you're not useful anymore." "Shut up." "I'm offering you a way out. Drop the gun, let her go, and I'll make sure you get protection. Witness protection, new identity, the works. Or you can trust the man who sent you to commit murder and hope he keeps his promises." The gunman's grip on the manager loosened slightly. Doubt flickered across what Morrison could see of his face. "How do I know you'll keep your word?" "Because I'm not the one who sent you here to kill someone. I'm not the one treating you as disposable. Choose." For a long moment, nobody moved. Then the gunman slowly lowered his weapon and released the manager. Webb and his agents swarmed in, cuffing both men. The wounded gunman was screaming about needing a doctor. The second man sat silently, mask removed, face resigned. Morrison recognized him. Officer James Cutler. He'd been on the periphery of the Monday Club, not important enough to arrest in the first wave. "Cutler, they sent you." Cutler wouldn't meet his eyes. "I'm sorry, Chief. They said if I didn't do it, my family would pay. My wife, my kids." Hargrove said. Morrison's blood went cold. "Hargrove sent you." Cutler nodded miserably. "He called me this morning. Said Dalton was talking, does it, that evidence existed that would expose everyone. Said if I didn't get it, my family would have an accident. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to be a cop. Come to me. Tell me what he threatened. Not try to murder a bank manager." Webb pulled Morrison aside. "We have enough. Cutler just implicated Hargrove in conspiracy to commit murder. We can arrest him today." "Not just Hargrove. I've got evidence on Vaughn Riley and ADA Simmons, too. We take them all." "That's going to start a war." "The war already started. I'm just finishing it." 2 hours later, Morrison was in a federal prosecutor's office with Webb, the U.S. attorney, and enough evidence spread across a conference table to end a dozen careers. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Diana Chen, reviewed documents with increasing disbelief. "This is massive. Racketeering, civil rights violations, conspiracy, attempted murder. If even half of this holds up, we're talking about decades of prison time for some very powerful people." "Will you prosecute?" Morrison asked. "Will I prosecute, Chief? I've been waiting years for something like this. Every corrupt cop we put away makes my job easier. The question is whether you're ready for the backlash." "What kind of backlash? The kind where the mayor's office calls demanding your resignation? The kind where city council threatens to defund your department? The kind where union lawyers tie this up in court for years? These people have friends in high places. I don't care who their friends are. Chen smiled. Good, because neither do I. Let's burn them down. Warrants were issued by 6 p.m., arrest teams assembled by 7. At 8 p.m., as the sun set over the city, Morrison led a convoy of federal agents and police officers to Deputy Chief Vaughn's suburban mansion. Vaughn answered the door in a bathrobe, wineglass in hand, looking irritated. His expression changed when he saw Morrison. Chief Morrison, what's the meaning of this? Morrison held up the warrant. Deputy Chief Marcus Vaughn, you're under arrest for racketeering, fraud, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent. Vaughn's wineglass shattered on the floor. This is a mistake. I'm the deputy chief. You can't just... I can and I am. Turn around. I want my lawyer. You'll get your phone call. Turn around now. Vaughn tried to run. Morrison caught him in 3 steps, spinning him around and cuffing him with practiced efficiency. The deputy chief, who had helped run the department's corruption for decades, was reduced to a stumbling, cursing man being marched to a police car in his bathrobe. Captain Riley was next. He didn't resist, just stared at Morrison with dead eyes and said, "You have no idea what you've started." "I know exactly what I've started. Justice. Justice? You think this is justice? You're dismantling the entire power structure of this department. Everyone who kept things running smoothly. When this city descends into chaos because there's no one left to maintain order, that's on you. The only thing you maintained was a protection racket for criminals with badges. The city will be fine without you." ADA Simmons was arrested at her office in the middle of prosecuting a case. The judge was forced to declare a mistrial when federal agents walked into the courtroom with an arrest warrant. Simmons's face went white. "This is politically motivated. You're destroying my career because I prosecuted cases you disagreed with." "I'm destroying your career because you knowingly prosecuted innocent people based on fabricated evidence. How many lives did you ruin, Rachel? How many people are sitting in prison right now because you needed conviction numbers and didn't care about guilt or innocence? I'll fight this. I have connections. The governor himself. The governor isn't above the law either. If he interferes with this prosecution, he'll join you in a cell. Now move." The final arrest was Hargrove. Morrison saved him for last, wanted him to know it was coming, wanted him to feel the same fear his victims had felt. They found Hargrove at his office in headquarters frantically shredding documents when the FBI burst in. "Too late," Webb said, gesturing to the shredded papers. "We already have copies of everything. Dalton kept excellent records." Hargrove looked at Morrison with pure hatred. "You self-righteous son of a bitch, you think you're a hero. You're just a cop who got lucky one time. That punch should have been the end of you. Instead, you turned it into a crusade." "That punch was the beginning. Everything after was just following the evidence." "There wouldn't be evidence if you hadn't provoked Dalton. You set this whole thing up." Morrison stepped closer. "I stood on a public sidewalk. Dalton chose to assault me. Santos chose to plant evidence. You chose to protect them. Every choice was yours. Own it." "I'll never see prison. I've got 25 years of favors owed. Judges, politicians, people who need me to keep their secrets. They'll make this disappear." "I don't think they will, because we're not prosecuting you in state court where your friends can help you. We're prosecuting you in federal court, and your friends don't reach that high." Hargrove's face crumbled. For just a moment, Morrison saw not a corrupt deputy commissioner, but a frightened old man realizing his empire had fallen. Then the moment passed and Hargrove straightened. "I want my lawyer." "You'll get one. Turn around." Morrison personally cuffed Hargrove, feeling a grim satisfaction as the metal clicked shut. This was the man who'd protected abusers for decades, who'd threatened witnesses, who'd destroyed careers of honest cops who tried to speak up. Now it was his turn to face justice. By midnight, 6 high-ranking officials were in federal custody. The media was in a frenzy. Morrison's phone had been ringing non-stop with calls from reporters, politicians, and officers. He ignored all of them and went to his office. Hayes was waiting there, looking exhausted, but triumphant. "We did it. We actually did it. We started it. The prosecutions will take months, maybe years, and we still have a department to rebuild. Speaking of rebuilding, I have the recruitment numbers. We're down 43 officers now. That's almost 30% of our force." "How many applications do we have?" 217, from good cops in other cities who heard what we're doing and want to be part of it, from veterans who left the job because of corruption and want to come back, from rookies who want to join a department that actually stands for something. Morrison felt something he hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. "Start the screening process. I want every applicant vetted thoroughly. Background checks, psychological evaluations, interviews with their former supervisors. We're not rebuilding this department with quantity. We're rebuilding it with quality. Already started. Chief, I have to ask, was it worth it? The threats, the danger, the political backlash that's coming. Morrison thought about the question. He thought about Dalton's punch, about Bradley's stabbing, about Santos's desperation, about all the victims who'd suffered because good cops stayed silent and bad cops stayed protected. Ask me again in 6 months. Right now, I'm too tired to know. His phone rang. The mayor. Chief Morrison, I need to see you in my office immediately. It's midnight, Mayor. I don't care what time it is. You just arrested my deputy chief, one of my captains, and the assistant district attorney who's been prosecuting our gang cases. You've created a political nightmare. I've arrested criminals who happen to hold positions of authority. When do you want to meet? Now. Morrison hung up and looked at Hayes. The political part of this is about to start. That's going to be uglier than the arrests. You want backup? No, I need you here keeping things running. If the mayor fires me, this department is yours. Don't let it slide backward. He's not going to fire you. You're a national hero. The press loves you. The press loved me when I was bleeding on the precinct steps. They'll turn on me the moment this gets complicated. Public opinion is fickle. Morrison drove to City Hall through empty streets. The mayor's office was lit up, and through the windows, Morrison could see a dozen people inside. City council members, the police union president, legal advisors. This was going to be an ambush. Morrison walked in without knocking. The conversation stopped. A dozen hostile faces turned toward him. Mayor Richard Thompson was 63, gray-haired, and looked like he hadn't slept. Chief Morrison, thank you for coming. Please sit. Morrison remained standing. I'll stand. Very well, let me be direct. The arrest of Deputy Chief Vaughn and the others has created a crisis. The department is in chaos. The DA's office is scrambling to figure out which cases Simmons corrupted, and the media is asking whether I have any control over my own police force. The media should be asking why you didn't know about the corruption. These people operated for decades under your administration. Thompson's face reddened. Are you suggesting I knew about this? I'm suggesting that this level of corruption doesn't happen in a vacuum. Either you knew and did nothing, or you should have known and didn't. Either way, it's a failure of leadership. Union President Briggs stood up, his face purple. You arrogant bastard, you don't talk to the mayor like that. Sit down, Carl, or I'll have federal agents investigate your role in all this too. I'm sure we'll find something interesting. Briggs sat, but his eyes promised murder. The mayor took a breath. Chief, I understand you believe you're doing the right thing, but you're destabilizing the entire city. Crime is going to spike when word gets out that we've lost 40 officers. Communities are going to panic. We need stability. You want stability built on a foundation of corruption? That's not stability. That's a time bomb waiting to explode. I'm diffusing it. By removing everyone with experience, by creating a power vacuum, by removing everyone who was abusing that power, there's a difference. A city council member Morrison didn't recognize spoke up. Chief, perhaps we could reach a compromise. You've made your point. You've arrested the bad actors. Now let the rest of us clean up quietly without more public spectacle. Clean up quietly, is that what you call sweeping corruption under the rug? Nama, every person involved gets prosecuted. Every case gets reviewed. Every victim gets a chance for justice. There's no compromise on that. Thompson stood. Then you leave me no choice. Chief Morrison, effective immediately, you're suspended pending an administrative review. The room went silent. Morrison felt rage and disappointment in equal measure. You're protecting them. I'm protecting this city from your crusade. You've done tremendous damage in just 2 weeks. I can't let you continue. The only damage I've done is to careers of criminals. If you're protecting them, that makes you complicit. Security, please escort Chief Morrison out of the building. 2 security guards entered the den, looking uncomfortable. Morrison held up his hand. I'll leave. But Mayor, this isn't over. The federal investigation continues with or without me, and when it's done, everyone involved is going down, including anyone who tried to obstruct it. Morrison walked out of City Hall with his head high, but his heart heavy. He'd known this was a possibility, had even expected it, but it still hurt. Outside, a crowd of reporters swarmed him, questions shouted from every direction. Chief Morrison, is it true you've been suspended? Chief, do you regret the arrests? Chief, what's your next move? Morrison stopped at his car and turned to face them. Cameras flashed. Microphones thrust forward. Yes, I've been suspended. No, I don't regret the arrests. And my next move is to continue fighting for the truth with or without a badge. Corruption doesn't end because a politician gets nervous. It ends when good people refuse to stay silent, that's all. He drove home thinking about everything that had happened since that moment on the precinct steps. 2 weeks ago, he'd been punched. Now he'd dismantled a criminal conspiracy and been suspended for his trouble. The irony wasn't lost on him. His phone buzzed. Text from Hayes. The entire department just walked out in protest. They're demanding you be reinstated. The mayor's office is in chaos. Morrison smiled. Maybe he'd been wrong about public opinion being fickle. Another text this time from Webb. Federal prosecutor says your suspension doesn't affect our case. We move forward with or without the mayor's blessing. Also, you might want to check the news. Morrison turned on the TV. Every major network was covering his suspension, but the coverage wasn't what the mayor had expected. Chief Morrison, who was assaulted on his first day and used that assault to expose massive corruption, has been suspended by Mayor Thompson. Civil rights groups are calling it retaliation. Community leaders are demanding Morrison's reinstatement, and sources inside the police department say officers are walking out in protest. The narrative wasn't reckless chief causes chaos, it was hero cop punished for doing the right thing. The mayor had miscalculated badly. Morrison's phone rang. Thompson. Chief Morrison, perhaps I was hasty. I'd like to discuss reinstating you under certain conditions. What conditions? That you coordinate with my office before making any more high-profile arrests. That you consider the political implications of your actions. That you work with us, not against us. In other words, you want me to go back to protecting the powerful and ignoring the corrupt. I want you to be pragmatic. I'm done being pragmatic. Reinstate me with full authority, or I'll hold a press conference tomorrow and tell everyone exactly why you suspended me. Let's see how that plays politically. You're bluffing. Try me. Thompson was silent for a long moment. Fine, you're reinstated, but Morrison, you've made powerful enemies. Watch your back. I've been watching it since day one, and I'm still here. Morrison hung up and allowed himself one moment of satisfaction. Then he got back to work. Because the war wasn't over, it was just beginning. 6 months had passed since Morrison's reinstatement, and the transformation was undeniable. He stood at his office window watching the shift change, seeing something he hadn't seen in years, officers walking with their heads high, smiling, talking to citizens instead of intimidating them. Hayes entered without knocking, carrying a thick folder. Trial results are in. All 6 defendants convicted on all counts. Morrison turned from the window. Vaughn Hargrove, Riley Simmons, and 2 others had faced a federal jury. The verdict had taken 4 hours. Sentencing. Next month, but the prosecutor is recommending maximum sentences. Vaughn's looking at 25 years, Hargrove 30. They'll die in prison. Morrison felt no satisfaction, just a grim acknowledgement that justice, though delayed, had arrived. What about Dalton? Pleaded guilty, got 17 years in exchange for his testimony. Martinez got 12. Santos got 15. And Walker? Hayes smiled. He's teaching at the academy now. Every rookie that comes through hears his story. How one moment of cowardice almost destroyed him, and how you gave him a chance to be better. He's become one of our best instructors. Morrison nodded. Walker had worked harder than anyone to earn his redemption. He'd testified in 6 separate trials, had helped identify corrupt officers. Morrison's initial investigation had missed and had become the conscience of the new department. How's recruitment going? We're at full strength. Better than full strength. We had to turn away qualified applicants. Everyone wants to work here now. The phone on Morrison's desk rang. He picked it up. Chief Morrison, this is Carol Bradley, Tom's mother. I wanted to call and thank you. Morrison sat down. Mrs. Bradley, how's Tom doing? Better, much better. When Sergeant Kovac was convicted, something changed in him, like he could finally breathe again. He started therapy, started going outside again. He even applied to be a security consultant for the new officer training program. That's wonderful to hear. It's because of you, Chief. You did what 3 other chiefs couldn't or wouldn't do. You actually cared about justice more than politics. Tom wanted me to tell you that he's proud to have served in your department, even if it nearly killed him. After she hung up, Morrison sat quietly for a moment. Bradley's story was one of dozens. Victims coming forward now that they knew their voices mattered. Cases being reopened, wrongful convictions being overturned. The system slowly and painfully beginning to heal. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You should come to Hannigan's bar tonight, alone. I have information you need. Morrison showed it to Hayes. What do you think? I think it's a trap. Probably, but what if it's not? Then bring backup. If I bring backup, whoever's there won't talk. They'll disappear and we'll never know what they wanted to tell us. Chief, after everything that's happened, you can't seriously be considering walking into a trap alone. But Morrison was already grabbing his jacket. I survived the first trap. I'll survive this one. That's not reassuring. Morrison drove to Hannigan's as evening fell. The bar looked different now, less menacing. The Monday Club had drunk here had planned their corruption here. Now it was just a dive bar trying to rebuild its reputation. He pushed through the door. The place was mostly empty, a few drunks at the bar. And in the back corner, sitting in the same booth where Morrison had confronted Santos 6 months ago, was a woman he didn't recognize. She was in her early 30s, Hispanic with intelligent eyes and a nervous energy. She gestured to the seat across from her. Morrison sat keeping his hand near his weapon. "Who are you, My name is Sofia Martinez. Tony Martinez was my brother." Morrison's guard went up. Martinez, one of the officers who'd participated in his assault, who'd filmed it, who'd lied on reports. "I'm sorry for what happened to your brother, but he made his choices." "I know he did, and I know he deserved to go to prison, but that's not why I'm here." She pushed a manila envelope across the table. "I'm here because of what I found in his apartment after he was arrested." Morrison opened the envelope. Inside were photographs, documents, and a handwritten journal. "Tony kept records," Sophia continued. "Everything he saw, everything he did, everyone who was involved. He was terrified of taking the fall alone, so he documented everything as insurance." Morrison flipped through the journal. Names he recognized, names he didn't. Dates, locations, detailed descriptions of crimes committed by police officers. "Why are you bringing this to me now? It's been 6 months." "Because I was scared. The people in that journal, some of them are still on the force. Some of them have been to my house asking questions about what Tony might have left behind. I've been hiding this evidence, terrified they'd find it, terrified of what they'd do to me if they knew I had it." "What changed?" "I saw you on TV. After you were suspended and then reinstated, you told reporters that corruption doesn't end because politicians get nervous. It ends when good people refuse to stay silent. I realized I was one of those people. If I stayed silent, I was protecting the people who destroyed my brother." Morrison studied her carefully. "Your brother participated in assaulting me, lied for Dalton, helped ruin innocent lives. You understand that?" "I understand perfectly. Tony wasn't a good person, Chief. He became everything I hate about bad cops. But that doesn't mean the people who corrupted him should walk free. They're still out there, still operating, just more carefully now." Morrison looked at the journal again. One name jumped out, Officer Daniel Prescott. Prescott had been investigated during Morrison's initial audit but had been cleared. The evidence against him was circumstantial at best. According to Tony Martinez's journal, Prescott had been involved in 19 incidents of excessive force, 7 evidence plantings, and 2 witness intimidations, all documented with dates and details that could be verified. If this information is accurate, it's going to reopen the investigation. More arrests, more trials. Are you prepared for that? "I'm prepared to do what's right, finally." Morrison called Hayes. "I need a protective detail on Sofia Martinez, 24/7, and I need Webb and his FBI team back. We've got new evidence." 3 hours later, Morrison was back in a conference room with federal agents spreading Tony Martinez's evidence across tables. Webb was reading the journal with increasing fury. "This Prescott guy, he's still on the force." "Yes, patrol officer. Clean record according to official files. But according to this, he's been one of the most violent officers in the department for 8 years. "Why wasn't he caught in your initial investigation?" "Because he's smart. He rotated between precincts every 2 years, and no single location had enough complaints to flag him. But if you look at his entire career, the pattern is clear." Webb closed the journal. "We need to verify every incident before we move. I'm not arresting a cop based solely on the word of another dirty cop." "Agreed." "Start with the cases where we can find witnesses. Cross-reference with hospital records, arrest reports, anything that can corroborate the timeline." The investigation took 2 weeks. Morrison worked 18-hour days personally reviewing every incident, tracking down witnesses who'd been too scared to testify before. Slowly, the case built itself. 15 incidents could be verified with hard evidence. 15 times, Prescott had brutalized someone and gotten away with it because the victims were poor or had criminal records or were too afraid of retaliation to speak up. Morrison arrested Prescott personally. He wanted to look the man in the eyes when he told him it was over. Prescott was working patrol when Morrison pulled his car over. The officer's face went from confused to terrified when he saw Morrison approaching with handcuffs and 3 FBI agents. "Officer Prescott, step out of the vehicle." "Chief, what's going on?" "You're under arrest for civil rights violations, assault under color of law, and conspiracy. You have the right to remain silent." Prescott tried to run, made it 5 steps before Morrison tackled him to the ground. They struggled briefly, then Morrison had him cuffed and neutralized. "I didn't do anything," Prescott screamed. "This is harassment. I'm a good cop. You're a criminal who hid behind a badge. There's a difference." Prescott's arrest opened the floodgates. Other officers Sophia Martinez had named in her brother's journal realized the walls were closing in. 3 resigned immediately. 2 more came forward with information about officers Morrison hadn't even suspected. By the end of the month, 7 more cops were in custody. The department Morrison had started rebuilding 6 months ago was being stress tested again, and it was holding. The new officers didn't close ranks to protect the bad ones. They helped investigate them. They testified against them. They proved that the culture had actually changed. One evening, Morrison was working late when his phone rang. Blocked number. "Morrison?" "Chief, it's Rick Dalton. I'm calling from prison." Morrison sat up. "What do you want, Dalton?" "I wanted to tell you something I should have said 6 months ago." Dalton's voice was different now, quieter, less angry. "I'm sorry, for hitting you, for all of it. I spent 17 years becoming someone I'm ashamed of, and I blamed everyone but myself. But sitting in here watching the trials on TV, seeing how many lives we destroyed, I finally get it. We weren't the good guys. We were exactly what you said we were, criminals with badges." Morrison was silent, unsure how to respond. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," Dalton continued. "I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that what you did exposing all of us, it wasn't just about punishment. It saved the department. My daughter wrote me a letter last week, first time she's contacted me in 6 months. She said she's thinking about becoming a cop because of you, because you showed her that police can actually be heroes. I'm glad she's talking to you again. She said if she joins the force, she wants to work at District 9, under your command, because that's where real cops work now." Dalton's voice cracked. "I threw away 17 years and destroyed my family because I thought the badge made me untouchable. But you proved that nobody's untouchable when they break the law. Not even me. Especially not me. Rick, I hope you use your time to become the person you should have been. It's not too late for that." "Maybe not. Maybe in 17 years I'll get out and actually be the cop I pretended to be. Thanks, Chief, for everything." The line went dead. Morrison sat in his office thinking about how far things had come. From that first punch to this moment. From a department rotted by corruption to one slowly, painfully healing. His phone buzzed again. Text from Chen. "National Police Reform Commission wants you to testify before Congress about what you did here and how other departments can replicate it." Morrison called him back. "Testify about what I just did my job." "You did more than your job. You dismantled a criminal conspiracy and rebuilt a police force from the ground up. 43 arrests, 27 convictions so far, 0 civil rights complaints in 6 months, crime down 18%, community trust ratings at an all-time high. You're a case study in how to fix broken departments." "It wasn't just me. Hayes, Rodriguez, Walker, all the officers who came forward, which is exactly what you should tell Congress. Show them it's possible. Give other chiefs a roadmap." Morrison agreed to testify. 3 weeks later, he was in Washington sitting before a congressional committee telling his story. The committee chairman, a gray-haired senator from Texas, asked him the question Morrison had been waiting for. "Chief Morrison, on your first day, you were assaulted by one of your own officers. Some might say you provoked that assault, that you deliberately put yourself in harm's way to create a pretext for investigation. How do you respond to that?" Morrison leaned forward into the microphone. "Senator, I stood on a public sidewalk observing a police station. That's not provocation. That's exercising my constitutional rights. Officer Dalton chose to assault me. He chose to violate my rights. He chose to demonstrate exactly what was wrong with that department. If simply existing in a public space while being well-dressed is considered provocation, then the problem isn't with the victim, it's with the officer. But you knew who you were. You knew what would likely happen. I suspected I might be harassed. I didn't anticipate being punched in the face. But when it happened, I had 2 choices: cover it up to avoid embarrassment or use it as an opportunity to expose systemic corruption. I chose exposure, and I'd make the same choice again. Even knowing it would cost you the death threats, the suspension, the political backlash. Senator, being a police chief isn't about being popular. It's about being right. And it was right to hold those officers accountable. It was right to root out corruption. It was right to rebuild that department based on integrity instead of intimidation. If doing the right thing cost me my career, I can live with that. I couldn't live with staying silent. The testimony went on for 3 hours. Morrison answered every question honestly, holding nothing back. He talked about the threats, the resistance, the moments he doubted himself, but he also talked about the transformation, the new officers who actually cared about community, the crime victims who finally felt safe reporting crimes, the children who stopped running when they saw police cars. When he finished, the chairman thanked him. Chief Morrison, your testimony will help shape police reform legislation across this country. Thank you for your service, and thank you for your courage. Morrison flew back home exhausted but satisfied. He'd told his story. Now it was up to others to learn from it. Back at District 9, Morrison found a surprise waiting. The entire department was assembled in the station parking lot. Officers in dress uniforms, community leaders, even Mayor Thompson, who'd tried to fire him 6 months ago. Hayes met him at his car. "We have something for you." Morrison followed her to a platform where a sheet-covered monument stood. Thompson stepped up to a microphone. "Chief Morrison, when you arrived here a year ago, this department was broken, corrupt, hated by the community it served. You could have done things the easy way. Made nice with the bad cops, kept your head down, collected a paycheck. Instead, you let yourself be assaulted, then used that assault to expose a criminal conspiracy that had operated for decades. You risked your career, your safety, and your life to do what was right. Today, we honor that." Thompson pulled the sheet away, revealing a memorial plaque. On it were the names of every victim of police corruption from the past 20 years. Below the names was an inscription, "They deserved justice. Chief James Morrison ensured they received it." Morrison felt his throat tighten. He hadn't expected this, hadn't wanted recognition. He just wanted to fix what was broken. But looking at those names, Bradley, whose career was destroyed for being honest. Martinez, who'd been beaten for no reason. Dozens of others whose lives had been shattered by bad cops, Morrison understood. This wasn't about him. It was about them. Finally being acknowledged. Finally mattering. He stepped up to the microphone, taking a moment to compose himself. "I don't deserve this memorial. The officers who stood up to corruption deserve it. The witnesses who testified despite threats deserve it. The community members who didn't give up on us deserve it. All I did was my job. The job every police chief should do, but too many don't." He looked out at the assembled crowd. New officers standing proud. Community members who'd once feared police now standing beside them. Children holding their parents' hands, not scared, just curious. "A year ago, Officer Dalton punched me on these steps. He thought he was asserting his dominance, putting an outsider in his place. What he actually did was expose a sickness that had infected this department for decades. That punch was the best thing that could have happened. Not to me, but to this community, because it gave us the opportunity to start over, to be better, to actually be the heroes we're supposed to be." Morrison pointed to the memorial. "These names represent our failures. Every person on this list was failed by officers who forgot their oath, who forgot that the badge is a responsibility, not a license. I promise you, I promise all of you that we will never forget again. This memorial will stand as a reminder that when we fail our community, there are real victims, real people whose lives are destroyed, and we are accountable to them, always." The crowd erupted in applause. Morrison stepped down from the platform, overwhelmed by the response. Hayes caught his arm. "Chief, there's someone here who wants to meet you." A teenage girl approached, maybe 16, with her mother beside her. The mother looked familiar. "Chief Morrison, I'm Angela Santos, Michael Santos' daughter. This is my mom." Morrison's heart clenched. Santos, the officer who'd tried to kill himself rather than face justice, who'd threatened Morrison, who'd hidden in Hannigan's bar planning violence. "I'm so sorry about your father," Morrison said carefully. "Don't be. I mean, I'm sad he's in prison, but I'm not sorry he got caught. My dad did terrible things, for years, and nobody stopped him until you did." Angela's voice was steady, mature beyond her years. "I wanted to thank you, because you showed me that doing the right thing matters even when it's hard, even when people hate you for it. My dad taught me that police protect their own no matter what. You taught me that police protect everyone, even from other police." Her mother spoke up. "Angela's applying to the police academy next year. She wants to be the cop Michael should have been." Morrison felt tears threatening. He'd destroyed this girl's father, sent him to prison for 15 years, and she was thanking him, saying she wanted to follow in his footsteps. Angela, if you join this department, I'll personally oversee your training, and I promise you'll learn to be the kind of officer this city deserves." After they left, Morrison stood alone for a moment looking at the memorial. All those names, all those lives. Some of them were getting justice now. Wrongful convictions overturned, settlements paid, apologies issued. It wasn't enough, could never be enough. But it was something. His phone rang. Webb. "Chief, I've got good news and bad news. Good news, the last of the corrupt officers just took a plea deal. We're done. Everyone who participated in the conspiracy is either in prison or awaiting sentencing. And the bad news, there's a department in Chicago that's requesting your help. They've got a corruption problem, want you to come do an assessment, maybe work your magic there too." Morrison laughed. "I'm not going anywhere. I've still got work to do here." "That's what I figured you'd say. But Chief, you started something, a movement. Other departments are watching what you did. Some are scared, some are inspired. But everyone's paying attention. What you did here matters beyond District 9. After Webb hung up, Morrison walked back into his precinct. His precinct, through the doors where Dalton had once lorded his power. Past the desk where Rodriguez had watched the assault on security monitors. Up the stairs to his office where he'd spent countless nights building cases against corrupt cops. Everything looked the same physically, but everything was different. He sat at his desk and opened his computer. Emails from other chiefs asking for advice. From officers in other cities wanting to transfer to District 9. From community groups thanking him. From the FBI asking him to consult on corruption cases in other jurisdictions. Morrison read them all, answering each one personally, because that was the job. Not the glory, not the recognition, the work. The constant grinding work of maintaining integrity in a system designed to protect itself. His door opened. Officer Walker entered, hesitant as always when approaching Morrison. "Chief, the new recruits are asking if you'll speak at their graduation tomorrow." "What are they graduating from?" "The Academy, your reform training program, the one that actually teaches them to protect and serve instead of dominate and control." Morrison smiled. "Tell them yes. I'll be there?" Walker started to leave, then turned back. "Chief, I know I say this a lot, but thank you for giving me a second chance, for teaching me that one mistake doesn't define a career." "You earned that second chance, Walker, every single day. You worked harder than anyone to prove you deserved to wear the badge. That's on you, not me." After Walker left, Morrison stood at his window one more time. The shift change was happening again. Officers heading out to patrol. But these officers were different. They smiled at citizens. They helped an elderly woman cross the street without being asked. They stopped to talk to kids playing basketball instead of viewing them as potential threats. This was what it looked like when police actually served their community instead of terrorizing it. Morrison's jaw had long since healed. The bruise was gone. The split lip mended. But the scar remained a thin line he could feel when he touched his mouth. He'd been offered plastic surgery to remove it. He'd declined. That scar was a reminder of where he'd come from, of what he'd survived, of why the work mattered. 1 year ago, Detective Rick Dalton had punched him on the precinct steps, blood spattering across his white shirt. Dalton had thought that punch would break him, would send him running back to wherever he'd come from. Instead, that punch had started a revolution. 43 arrests, 32 convictions, a department rebuilt from the ground up, a community learning to trust police again, officers who actually cared about the oath they'd taken, and most importantly, victims finally receiving justice. Morrison would carry the scar of Dalton's punch for the rest of his life, but he wore it with pride, because that scar represented something more than violence. It represented the moment when everything changed, when a corrupt system was forced to face itself, when bad cops learned they weren't untouchable, when good cops learned they could stand up without being destroyed. That scar was proof that one punch, one moment of brutality, one officer's arrogance could be transformed into something greater, into accountability, into justice, into hope. Chief James Morrison had let himself be punched in the face, and in return he'd torn down an empire of corruption and built something better in its place. He'd do it again in a heartbeat, because that's what real cops do. They take the hits, they stand up after, and they keep fighting for what's right no matter how many punches they have to take along the way. The bruise had faded, but the message was permanent. Nobody, absolutely nobody, is above the law.